There's a $20 bill in your wallet right now. Look at it. That piece of paper isn't backed by gold. It isn't backed by any physical commodity. If you took it to the US Treasury and demanded something of real value in exchange, they'd laugh at you. And yet, that worthless piece of paper is the most powerful weapon in human history. More powerful than nuclear arsenals. More influential than any army. Because that dollar bill, and trillions like it, don't just buy things. They control governments. They topple regimes. They decide which countries prosper and which collapse. The Roman Empire conquered through legions. The British Empire through ships. The American Empire? It conquered through currency. And most people have no idea it even exists. Let me show you how it works. Right now, at this very moment, over 60% of global foreign exchange reserves are held in US dollars. Not pounds, not euros, not won. Dollars. When Japan trades with Brazil, they use dollars. When India buys oil from Saudi Arabia, they use dollars. When a company in France pays a supplier in South Korea, the transaction flows through dollars. Why? It's not because these countries prefer dollars. It's because they have no choice. This is the hidden architecture of global power. And it was built deliberately, systematically over 70 years through a system most people have never heard of, the petrodollar system. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to the moment the dollar became king. July 1944. A hotel in New Hampshire, and a meeting that would redesign the entire world economy. World War II is still raging. But the Allied powers are already planning for what comes after. Representatives from 44 nations gather at the Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The question on the table: what will the post-war global financial system look like? Britain, still clinging to its empire, wants the pound to remain central. The British delegation, led by John Maynard Keynes, proposes a new international currency called Bancor, a neutral reserve currency that no single nation controls. It's a brilliant idea. Fair, balanced, democratic. The Americans reject it immediately. The US delegation, led by Harry Dexter White, has a different vision. The dollar becomes the world's reserve currency. All other currencies peg their value to the dollar. And the dollar, in turn, is pegged to gold at $35 per ounce. Why would other countries agree to this? Because America has one overwhelming advantage. It holds 3/4 of the world's monetary gold. Fort Knox is overflowing. Every other country is depleted by war. America makes a promise. Hold dollars, and you can always convert them to gold. The dollar is as good as gold. Trust us. The other nations, exhausted and desperate for American aid, agree. The Bretton Woods system is born. And just like that, the dollar becomes the foundation of global trade. But here's what nobody realizes at the time. America has just created a system where it can print money that the entire world must accept as payment. Every country needs dollars to trade. So they must either export to America or borrow dollars from American banks. This gives America an extraordinary privilege: the ability to run massive deficits without consequences. If any other country printed money recklessly, their currency would collapse. But when America does it, the whole world absorbs the inflation because everyone needs dollars. It's the greatest financial scam in history. And for 27 years, it works perfectly. Until it doesn't. By the late 1960s, cracks are forming. America is spending enormous amounts on the Vietnam War and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs. The government is printing dollars to pay for it all. Way more dollars than the gold reserves can back. Other countries start noticing. France, led by Charles de Gaulle, is particularly suspicious. De Gaulle understands what's happening. America is exporting its inflation to the rest of the world. The dollars flooding global markets are losing value, but everyone else has to accept them. So, in 1965, France does something audacious. They start demanding gold for their dollars. They send warships to New York Harbor to physically collect gold from the Federal Reserve and transport it back to France. Other countries watch closely. If France is cashing out, maybe they should too. By 1971, the situation is critical. America's gold reserves are hemorrhaging. At the current rate, Fort Knox will be empty within months. President Nixon faces a choice: stop spending and balance the budget, or break the promise. On August 15, 1971, Nixon goes on television and announces that the United States is temporarily suspending the convertibility of dollars into gold. He's lying. It's not temporary. It's permanent. The gold window closes forever. The dollar is now backed by nothing. Just paper. Just promises. Every economist predicts disaster. The dollar should collapse. Countries should abandon it for other currencies. The whole Bretton Woods system should disintegrate. But something strange happens. The dollar doesn't collapse. In fact, within a few years, it's more dominant than ever. How? Because the US government made a new deal. Not with other governments. With oil. The Middle East is in turmoil. The Yom Kippur War triggers an oil embargo. Oil prices quadruple overnight. The global economy teeters on the edge of collapse. But US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger sees an opportunity. He flies to Saudi Arabia with a proposal. A deal that will reshape global power for the next 50 years. Here's the offer. Saudi Arabia agrees to sell its oil exclusively in US dollars. Not francs, not marks, not yen. Only dollars. And Saudi Arabia convinces the other OPEC nations to do the same. In exchange, the United States provides Saudi Arabia with military protection, advanced weapons, and a guarantee of the royal family's survival. The Saudis agree. Think about what this means. Oil is the most critical commodity on earth. Every country needs it. Transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, electricity, modern civilization runs on oil. And now, to buy oil, every country in the world must first acquire dollars. This creates permanent structural demand for US currency. It doesn't matter if America is printing money recklessly. It doesn't matter if the dollar isn't backed by gold. Every country needs dollars to buy the energy that powers their economy. The petrodollar system is born, and with it, a new form of empire. An empire that doesn't require occupying armies or colonial administrators. An empire built entirely on currency dependency. But the system needs one more element to be truly inescapable: enforcement. Here's where it gets dark. Because the dollar isn't just the global reserve currency. It's also the most powerful weapon in America's arsenal. Every international transaction that involves dollars, even if it's between two foreign countries, flows through the US banking system. Through SWIFT, the messaging system banks use to communicate. Through correspondent banks in New York. This gives America unprecedented surveillance. The US Treasury can see virtually every major financial transaction on Earth. And more importantly, they can block them. This is how sanctions work. When America wants to punish a country, it doesn't need to invade. It just cuts them off from the dollar system. Suddenly, that country can't trade oil, can't access international credit, can't pay for imports. Their economy suffocates. We've seen this play out repeatedly. Iraq under Saddam Hussein, Iran, Venezuela, Russia after invading Ukraine, North Korea. When America freezes a country's dollar reserves or bans them from SWIFT, it's effectively an act of economic warfare, more devastating than bombing campaigns, more permanent than military occupation. And there's almost no defense against it, because the entire global economy is built on dollar infrastructure. Countries have tried to escape. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed African currency to trade oil. He was dead within months, his country destroyed. Iraq's Saddam Hussein announced plans to sell oil in euros instead of dollars. 2 years later, the US invaded. Coincidence? Maybe. But the message is clear. Challenging the dollar system is dangerous. This is why China is so carefully, methodically building alternatives. The Belt and Road Initiative, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, bilateral trade agreements that bypass dollars. They understand they're not just building economic partnerships, they're constructing escape routes from dollar dependency. But here's the brutal reality. It's not working fast enough. Despite decades of effort, despite America's declining manufacturing base and mounting debts, despite the rise of China and the creation of alternative payment systems, the dollar is still dominant. In 2000, the dollar share of global reserves was about 71%. Today, it's still around 58 to 60%. It's declined, yes, but not collapsed, not even close. Why? Because the dollar system has a feature that makes it nearly impossible to replace: network effects. The more people use dollars, the more valuable dollars become. The more valuable dollars become, the more people want to use them. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. Every international contract written in dollars, every central bank holding dollar reserves, every oil transaction priced in dollars, each one makes the system stronger, more entrenched, more inevitable. To replace the dollar, you'd need something better. Not just equal, better. Because the switching costs are enormous. Banks would need to retool. Contracts would need to be rewritten. Central banks would need to dump trillions in dollar reserves, which would destroy their value and tank their own portfolios. It's a trap. The system is too big to escape and too costly to abandon. This is the final evolution of empire. Not territorial control, not resource extraction, but something far more elegant and insidious: making yourself indispensable. The Roman Empire fell when the legions weakened. The British Empire fell when the navy couldn't protect the colonies. But the American Empire, it's built into the DNA of global commerce itself. You can't sanction it without sanctioning yourself. You can't abandon it without abandoning your own economy. You can't fight it without using the very system it controls. And that's why, 70 years after Bretton Woods, 50 years after Nixon closed the gold window, the dollar remains dominant. Not because America is the richest country, China's economy rivals it, not because America produces the most. That title belongs to China too. The dollar dominates because the world is locked into a system designed to make American currency necessary for survival. Every other empire in history required soldiers to maintain control. The dollar empire requires only one thing: that you want to participate in the modern global economy. And if you do, if you want to trade, to grow, to develop, you have no choice but to bow to the dollar. That's not just power. That's inevitability. And that's why the dollar is the world's last empire. Because it conquered something no army ever could. It conquered necessity itself.